Hey everyone, welcome to the Copy Blogger Academy. My name is Tim Stoddart. Thank you so much for joining us on today's presentation. We've had so much excitement and I've gotten a ton of DMs about the enthusiasm for today's presentation. We have the founder of Copy Blogger doing a presentation for us about Web3 and how you can use Web3 to grow your brand and invest in yourself in the future. So my presenter today is my friend, Brian Clark. Brian, how are you? Great to see you.
I'm doing fine, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. We took the long drive to Miami. I'm out of Nashville for the month, so I am enjoying the sunshine for a full month.
Sounds good. I'm
yeah,
getting pale. I'm getting pale over here in Colorado. Got to hit the beach.
Yeah, which is why to everybody, to our regular attendees, I don't have my super spaceship set up, and I'm kind of just making do in the bedroom in the Airbnb. So I'm thrilled to be here. Before we get started, a couple real quick housekeeping tips. I get DMs every day, basically, people asking if it will be recorded and where they can find the presentations once they are recorded. So yes, this is recorded. Every masterclass presentation and every coaching call that we do gets recorded and sent out via email. And if you can't find it in the email, you can always go into the actual network. And there's a link that just says masterclasses, or if you want access to all the different presentations we do, you can click on topics, and the topics will have the masterclasses, the coaching sessions, and it will also have the show notes for the accountability groups. But we don't record the accountability groups because it seems like it's got a little more intimate feel when people know that they can say things and it won't be permanently on the internet. So for all the DMs I got and all the questions, yes, this is recorded and it will be sent to you slightly edited in the morning in case you can't watch the whole thing. All right, well, without further ado, we're just gonna get started with this. I am personally very excited to watch this presentation. I am excited about Web3 and the potential implementations on how we can all use Web3 accordingly. So Brian, I am going to give control over to you. This is the part of the Zoom session where you always go like, wait, how do I do this?
I was just thinking that, like, I always forget to screen share order. Like there's an order to screen sharing that you have to follow or you screw everything up.
Sure. Oh yes, and one more note. Sorry to cut you off, Brian.
No worries.
Everybody, I am going to be here. My mic is going to be off and my video is going to be off. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask the questions in the chat. I'm going to be here recording them. And make sure when you open chat, there's a little drop down and it says hosts and panelists. Make sure that says everyone, so that way the questions are also recorded and we can send it. So hi, Tim, I'm in Miami. So you can send your questions there. Yeah, so we got a great presentation. Usually we do more of an intro, but we want to get started on this because there's a lot of information. So thank you so much, Brian, and let's get started.
All right. I guess for the recording, I will do a formal, clean beginning, but just to get started here today for everyone who's here, hey, I'm glad you're here. It's good to see you. As Tim mentioned, if you don't know who I am, I founded Copy Blogger 16 years ago this month. Can you believe that? But we're still trying to keep it cutting edge. Copy Blogger started, at the beginning of Web 2. I'll go into that a little bit more, and being at the beginning of a big shift in the internet has a lot of advantages. That's really what I'm going to try to pique your curiosity here today with this presentation. I'm going to pause a second and we'll formally get started. Hey everyone, Brian Clark here, and welcome to the benefits of Web3 for writers and content creators. I am the founder of Copy Blogger way back in 2006. Hard to believe that Copy Blogger is 16 years old this month. And we're sitting here talking about a site, Copy Blogger, that started at the very beginning of Web 2 and benefited from that greatly. And here we are at the beginning of Web 3. And I want you to understand how this relates to you as a writer and as a content creator so that you can start looking into things from your perspective, your interest level, and look for opportunity. Obviously, this is a brand new presentation. I've never done it before, so hopefully it comes off okay. At the same time, I have been living and breathing this stuff for 6 months, which feels like 6 years in how much has changed and happened just in a very short period of time. So I'm going to try to condense all of that into something workable for you so that you, in turn, can get involved, do your own research, pay attention from your own unique creative perspective, because that's what's interesting about Web3. It really gives the individual creator, the individual content entrepreneur, more tools and more power, more strategy, more tactics in order to grow a very powerful tiny business. We don't have to make a giant business with tons of employees and venture capital and all of this stuff. That hasn't been true for a while, but I think you'll see from this presentation that what we're entering into with this next phase of the web gives you more tools to do things that you probably thought were impossible up until now. So I guess from a definitional standpoint, we have to talk about what is Web3. You would think that perhaps that would be an easy thing to define. So Web 1 was basically what they called the read internet, meaning there was information posted from all over the world that you could freely access, educate yourself. At that time, that was the most amazing thing probably that humanity's ever seen in terms of freely accessible knowledge. Web 2 was known as the read-write web. The write aspect means that interaction, the internet had always been interactive, but the tools made it so that everyone could talk to each other. That's why the term conversation was such a buzzword during the early blogging phase. A lot of people may not remember that blogs were the original form of social media. We didn't necessarily see Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter becoming such dominant large platforms and bringing social media mainstream outside of the nerdy little blogging world. But that's exactly what happened. And of course, there were benefits to that, and there's some really bad consequences to that. So as we shift into Web 3, we're going to talk about what that means and how it's different from Web 2. But first of all, let's define it from my perspective. I've been paying attention to this for years, but like I said, it's really only been the last 6 months where we saw the inflection point happen. We're like, oh man, this is happening now. So a lot of people equate Web 3 with blockchain, crypto, NFTs, DAOs. We're going to talk about all of that because that's important. But some people think Web3 is only that. That is incorrect. And I think it's a very short-sighted way to think about things. Other people will use the term metaverse, and that is usually applied in the context of virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. That's part of it too, but it's not the whole thing. So let me give you my 4-part definition of Web3. Yes, blockchain. Blockchain is the foundation of the next phase of the internet. It's the layer that provides for trust. It provides for documentation, security, transactions, collaboration. It's a new spin on the digital environment that we've been in that really is revolutionary in what it allows people to do together without knowing each other and without even necessarily trusting each other, thanks to these smart digital contracts that kind of power the blockchain. We'll go into that a little bit deeper in a minute. But also happening right now and speeded up thanks to the pandemic is artificial intelligence, automation. You're probably using automation with your email marketing software right now. So when I'm talking about artificial intelligence, I'm not necessarily talking about the big programs that perhaps the enterprise or corporations will use that are probably going to threaten a lot of traditional jobs. I'm talking about the kind of software applications that can augment entrepreneurs, freelancers, anyone who works for themselves to do more than is humanly possible alone. So by apps, I mean the apps on your phone. I mean your email marketing software. All of it is going to get much smarter. And the environment, our home base on the web that we have going forward will also be augmented with smart software that learns about your audience and your visitors and your community, that advises you, and that does things for you. So that's pretty big chunk that doesn't get a lot of attention these days. Next up is augmented and virtual reality. Again, what people refer to when they use the term metaverse, which is sometimes interchangeable with Web3. I think it is. I think we're talking about the same thing here. But virtual reality, of course, is something you're familiar with. If you've seen the movie Ready Player One, it's a complete immersive virtual world. The term metaverse comes from the 1992 book Snow Crash, where that was coined by the author Neil Stephenson. And a lot of people read that book in the 90s and have been building out their conception of the internet and now the metaverse as we go forward. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is the mixing of real life and the digital world. So what is that analogous to? Think about your smartphone. Right now, we have a revolutionary and powerful device that we carry around that is also the worst data interface ever invented. I think our kids will look back, or our grandkids will look back and go, you did what? You walked around looking at that rectangle like an idiot, causing car crashes, running into pedestrians, running into walls. It's not good. So Apple brought us into the smartphone era, and I'm predicting that Apple will replace the smartphone with augmented reality glasses. They'll be the ones to pull it off because they have that design style that Google certainly doesn't have. So keep your eyes on that space. It's taking longer than we anticipated, but I'm fairly confident that we're going to, that's what's going to happen to the smartphone. And that augmented reality, that mix of real world and digital, is also the metaverse. It's not just a purely immersive virtual environment. It's the totality of the real world and the digital world, because you've already got people creating the metaverse is here right now. Google mapping the physical environment. Every Tesla has sensors that is not only detecting the environment, they're recording it. So we're having digital twins of everything being created. We just can't see them yet. And why can't we see them? Because we don't all wear the right hardware. That'll be coming in the next couple of years. The sales of Facebook's Oculus product are through the roof. We really have kind of turned the corner in 2021. And it's really important. If you haven't been paying attention, it's okay. You can get caught up pretty quickly. And I hope that I get you there today. And then finally, we've got advanced sensors and networks. Advanced sensors, if you've heard of the Internet of Things, meaning everything, not everything, like your toaster doesn't have to have a sensor in it. Maybe someone will try to sell you one. It's more important in other areas like buildings, machinery, devices, cities can all benefit from these access points into the internet when combined with these digital twins of machinery, factories, buildings, entire cities. There's even a digital twin of the entire Earth and its climate system, which is, of course, designed to help find solutions to climate change. So you've got all these sensors everywhere that are effectively helping to create the very metaverse that we can't really see. And then networks. 5G is already here, introduced last year. If you have the latest iPhone or another smartphone that is 5G enabled, you may be already using it. It's rolling out big this year. And we're not talking about a little bit faster than 4G. We're talking exponentially faster. That's why 5G is a big deal. And when we're all walking around with glasses that are augmented with our data that would be what we look at in our phone, that's going to take a lot of speed and bandwidth in order to fully appreciate that. So 5G in the United States, I think, is 3 to 5 times faster than 4G, and it's capable of being 10 times as fast. So that means that you get instant downloads of video, of full videos, right? It's an exponential leap in speed. Add to that, you've got satellite internet program, space, what is it? Satellite X, Elon Musk project. All of these projects taken together with 5G will mean within a few short years, we'll have ubiquitous coverage for the first time ever. And I go to the desert, I go to the mountains. At some point, I won't be cut off at all. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know yet, but it'll be nice to have the option. So these 4 things are what I call Web3, or if you prefer, you can call it the metaverse. A couple of years ago, it had a term that I think is technically the most accurate, but it's not going to catch on, and that's the spatial web. What that means is we're moving to a 3D web environment, right? We're moving away from web pages to web places with blockchain as the ledger, the transactional and trust layer that powers the whole thing. Today, we're going to talk a lot about the blockchain aspects because they're here now. They had to come first, really, when you think about it, for all of this cool stuff to happen. AI is happening and becoming more affordable and off the shelf. AI and AR and VR happening, will be mainstream soon. And the networks and all of that, it's all happening and coming together at one time. So 3D web, spatial web, metaverse, Web3. Let's just go with Web3 for now, since that seems to be the term that everyone's talking about and arguing about. Okay, so another aspect that's uniquely synonymous with Web3 is the term decentralization. What are we really talking about here? Well, the most grand libertarian thinkers would like to see everything decentralized. From a political standpoint, the biggest enemy of a libertarian is the federal government, right? So they would like to see smaller levels of governance. This is not, to me, a political issue whatsoever. I see decentralization as a way that allows creators like us to have tools that keep us completely independent and free from big platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Google, what have you. And that's really what matters here. So in that sense, back before social media went mainstream, when I was talking about blogging, that was more or less decentralized. And what did that mean? Everyone had their own blog. They posted content to that blog. They linked to others when they wanted to cite them, reference them, or provoke them, even with ideas, conversation, argument, what have you. I see some of the latest arguments, like Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, attacked the VC guys over their investments in Web3, saying this, you're not trying to decentralize. Scott Galloway just put out a kind of a takedown of Web3 where he says it's only for rich people. That got rebutted pretty handily by a guy named Packy McCormick. Reminds me of the old blogging days, except it's all being done with email newsletters now. More or less the same concept, though. So if you are running your email newsletter on Substack, however, you are falling prey to centralization again. Substack is the most unneeded product in the world, in my view, but you know how things go. People will sacrifice freedom for convenience. And decentralization is really a choice to be made among those like me who have pretty much the whole time stayed away from being tied to these centralized platforms. I don't use Facebook at all. I have an Instagram account, but I don't use it. I basically just tweet random stuff on Twitter, drive traffic to my projects, right? But if Twitter went away tomorrow, I'd still be fine. So that's a decentralized mindset there. Now, that by itself is not revolutionary, although, you know, even in the creator economy, you've got people who make their living from YouTube ads or Instagram, or they're tied only to sponsorships. Again, they're effectively working for these Silicon Valley platforms, and it's frustrating, and your livelihood can be taken away at any moment. So those of you who've been around Copyblogger for a long time, back before we sold Studio Press and Rainmaker, you heard it all the time from me. We borrowed the term digital sharecropping from a guy named Nicholas Carr, who basically said, if you're creating user-generated content, you work for the platform. You are a sharecropper for the platform. You'll see people even today saying, don't build on rented land. This is all about decentralization or owning your assets, which is an incredibly important thing. So yes, I'm still preaching that, even though I'm no longer in the website software business, because it is the absolute truth. And as an advocate heading into Web3, I'm even more adamant about it than ever. But as you'll see in this presentation, it's more than just being independent. It's actually being independent of these massive platforms, but more codependent on your audience and your community in really fascinating ways. So let's kind of move to that. All right, so I want to introduce you to the idea that I've recently started talking about in Future Freedom, which is one of my new projects. That's a membership. I call it a mentorship site, where I basically teach the very latest of what I'm thinking. And the very latest of what I'm thinking, I'm calling sovereign startup. So a little background on this terminology. There was a book written in 1999, so 22 years ago, called The Sovereign Individual. I was never aware of this book until earlier this year, honestly. And I went back and I bought it. And it's a book that's a favorite, again, among libertarians. Again, if from a political standpoint, they don't like, you know, powerful nation states or centralized governments telling them what to do. Okay, so it was embraced by that group. And I think the authors probably had that view again. I don't think of it politically at all. All I care about is creative freedom and the ability to build the kind of business I want, to serve my audience, my community, and my customers as I see fit, without having to bow to Facebook or any other of these massive platforms that are you know, make billions and are venture funded and borderline monopolies. I'm not interested in that at all. So that's the background on the word sovereign. Let me tell you a little bit about this book. The book's main premise is basically that the internet will cause nation states to lose power, right? Their citizens will need them less if they are digitally savvy. So this book went on to make that case and effectively predicted cryptocurrency, digital nomadism, location independent businesses, and basically the threat to democracy we're seeing right now. And probably most telling, the rise in nationalism among those who can't do what people like us can do, those who aren't location independent, those who aren't digitally savvy and can create digital businesses. So it's creating a divide where people like us can go anywhere in the world that we want and still conduct a profitable business, because geography doesn't matter to our business necessarily. And number two, we can live according to our own lifestyle choices wherever we want, or keep traveling as nomads do. So the whole rise of MAGA and Brexit in the UK, you've got two very powerful countries that are effectively saying, we don't want people from outside coming over here. And the rest of the world is like, hey, come here. We're a Caribbean island and we'll give you tax breaks and other preferential treatment. We're a beautiful European country and we'll give you a golden visa and all these other perks. So the thesis was that nation states would lose power. In the process, that makes countries and even cities compete for the best and the brightest in the world. And believe it or not, that means all of you, all of us here who do this kind of digital work. And as you'll see, I have always had a fondness for the writer. How could I not? But I truly believe that writers and other creative content creators are the ones who will benefit the most from this shift into Web3 because of the unique attributes that are required and the unique gifts that you all have as writers. So that's kind of an overview of where this term came from. Let me break down what the individual attributes are as I see them. So solo or very small. There's no doubt that in the last 5 to 7 years, the number of businesses that have no employees, they're just like one person or a small group of founders, maybe a husband and wife, that are making over 7 figures in revenue has increased exponentially. And that's got to be attributed to mainly the internet and digital technology, but also the audience first idea that you reach a group of people, you figure out what they need, and that's what you create for them, as opposed to the traditional venture funded startup concept. So that's been going on for a while now, and it's going to continue. You're going to see more and more individual companies. So for example, my new company, Movement Ventures, is myself and 2 partners, no employees. We'll talk about how we get things done in just a second. Next element, community driven. I'm specifically in the community business here, both with Unemployable, and we're introducing a new community over for my further newsletter. Copyblogger Academy is a community, and we have a long legacy of doing this ever since 2007, where even though we were primarily a software business at that time, we always understood both structured community, like paid membership, and also communities that formed around our software, like with StudioPress. WordPress is an open source project. So when WP Engine acquired StudioPress for many millions of dollars, they were buying that community of users who were building businesses with the efficiency that the Genesis framework afforded them. It's one of the most remarkable things in my career. Brian Gardner gets a ton of credit for that, but I'm just as proud as he is, I think, of what we were able to do there. Community is key. If you've been paying attention at all to the Web3 chatter, community will come up over and over again. The only problem is a lot of the guys, and a lot of them are guys, who are heavy into crypto and are talking about community have never run a community. They don't understand the psychological dynamics behind a community. Their key to Web3 is knowing how to use a crypto wallet. I think you should figure out how to use a crypto wallet, but that's not the key. Community is the key. And as a writer, you have the keys and the talents to lead and form vibrant communities. Next up is location independent. Digital nomads have been around for 20 years. It's more than that now, and I'll expand on that in just a bit. No VC or angel investments. Okay, I've been bootstrapped my entire career. What I'm talking about when I say this now is not that you have to do it the typical bootstrapping way. So for example, I start Copyblogger in 2006. For 18 months, I'm trying to figure out what the first product is. I do some affiliate offers for at that time, online courses were not that common. Promoted one. It sold really well. I used that money to keep going, but it was also market research. My audience is interested in purchasing online courses. So in 2007, that was the first product I created because I had the means of production for that. I'm not a coder. I'm not a technical person. I'm a content creator. So what I could do was take what I knew and create a course. That took us from 0 to 6 figures in a week and then 7 figures by the end of the year. My next business from there was a big leap for a non-technical founder, and that was a WordPress software company. The year after that, I launched a third startup, and that was our first SaaS product. So all of a sudden, you go from just a writer to owning 2 software companies and an online education company, none of which had any employees. They all kind of met the definition of a sovereign startup. But again, key differences, and I'll tell you what's changing and how powerful it is. So when I say no VC or angel investments, I don't mean you have to bootstrap like I did, even though it's still a pretty viable way to do it if you have to. I'm saying there are other ways to raise capital that are inclusive of the very people you're serving in the first place. Same goes for traditional small business finance. I don't know anyone who started a digital business that got an SBA loan. So I don't even think that's an option, but I just wanted to point out that you're not going to the bank for this money either. So no employees, how do you get things done, right? That you can't do yourself? Well, part of your community are a network of freelancers and consultants. In my case, I've always hired and found the people I need to do certain projects from within my community or my audience in the first place. So it's not really a separate thing from community, but it's a different function. And you will find as we go forward into Web3, if you're a freelancer, you'll join various communities and participate because you'll be able to get work, but you'll also be spotting opportunities to lead your own community, as we'll discuss in a minute. And then finally, this very smart, powerful software that we're talking about, basically marketing automation 10 years ago was very expensive and clunky. And now a ConvertKit account does amazing automation sequences. Add a little bit to that. You can do almost anything you need to best serve your audience using technology combined with the creativity of your content and your copy. And then finally, sovereign startups use the internet to lead niche movements that transcend marketing. In other words, you get people excited about a common objective where you're all sharing one vision of success. That could be Copyblogger Academy, but the point I'm trying to make to you is that what we call marketing often works best when it's really doesn't feel like marketing at all. And this has been kind of something that I figured out when I went on sabbatical in 2018, that every business I started was me joining a movement and becoming a leader in that movement rather than just marketing, right? When I started a real estate business, I specifically chose to only represent home buyers. I won't go into too much about it, but that's a niche movement within the real estate industry that thinks representing both sides of the deal is a horrible situation for the home buyer. It's a good deal for the seller, bad for the buyer. When I started Copyblogger, my mission at that point was to help bloggers make a living, effectively turning writers into entrepreneurs. And the first thing I had to teach them was, look, I tried to make money with advertising. It's really hard. What you ought to do is sell products and services. That turned into something called content marketing. I'd been doing it since '98, but it was Joe Polizzi who convinced me that, hey, I call this content marketing. We should all call it content marketing. That was another movement. And that took the whole blogging thing to a whole different level of a major $50 billion industry. I'm not even sure what the current stats are. It's mind boggling that I was a pioneer in that. WordPress. I started using WordPress the first year it came out, 2005. By 2008, I was selling WordPress software and providing support for it because I saw an opportunity for something I believed in, WordPress, and a role for me to play as a leader, because WordPress was very developer centric as an open source project, but business people were adopting it. They needed someone who spoke their language. And that led to my first WordPress company that really changed the industry. Then that went on to be Genesis and StudioPress, which again, ultimately was acquired by WP Engine. So it's important to understand that to choose something bigger than yourself that has momentum. We'll dig a little bit deeper into that in just a second. Okay, so on the location independent aspect, let me elaborate a little bit on this. First of all, I want to point out that my designer created these slides for me, and that is the graphic for location on, at least I know it is on the iPhone. And then I use the term location shoppers, and now I can't see anything but the Target logo, right? Same thing for you. Yeah, okay, that's just an odd coincidence. But what do I mean here? So yes, we can live anywhere we want. We can set up our business anywhere we want. That can be a different place from where we live, by the way. And we can keep our money even in another jurisdiction. That's truly the essence of becoming a world citizen. What I mean by location shopper is what I alluded to earlier, that even as some very powerful Western nations are trying to keep people out, to keep immigrants out, other nations have their arms wide open. Now, this really escalated during COVID. Like I said, digital nomadism is as old as laptops and internet connections. But what we saw with COVID is that a lot of people got to work from home for the first time. And then they didn't want to go back. And then a ton of people, they're calling it the Great Resignation, quit their jobs to start these location independent businesses, because once you have a taste of this kind of freedom, man, it's hard to let go of it, right? So these countries ranging from Caribbean islands to, say Costa Rica, are suffering because tourism got shut down during the lockdowns of COVID. So they're suffering from that, and that was not a good deal. But coming out of it, they started thinking, what can we do to boost things back up? Because a lot of people, even during COVID, were leaving the United States, they were leaving Great Britain, and going to other places. So these countries see this migration happening. They're like, we need to attract this foreign money, because, even if we don't charge them taxes, they're going to spend money here. And that is good for our environment. Our people need commerce. They need to eat, right? So it's a very pragmatic response. But now you're seeing it escalate to richer nations like Spain, Portugal, there's Argentina. I mean, there are so many examples here where countries, just like predicted 22 years ago in the sovereign individual, are competing for citizens, even if they're only there for a year, right? Okay, that's what I mean by location shopping. And here are some things to take into account. Nomad friendly basically means that country is going to let you in under special rules that are different than just a basic 3-month tourist visa. So in the last year or so, they are literally called digital nomad visas in dozens of countries. New programs are popping up all the time. And they effectively say, please come here. You can stay for a year instead of just 3 months. And it's a great place, right? So you're seeing that competitive angle. So of course, whoever treats you better on just getting there and staying there is going to have a factor in where you choose, right? Makes sense. Second thing, no offshore taxes. What do I mean by offshore? Offshore simply means outside of the particular country that you're in. A lot of people think of Caribbean nations because that's where tax havens and offshore corporations were often found, but it has nothing to do with the beach. It just means outside of that country. So most countries in the world tax worldwide income, meaning if you're in that country for a certain period of time, usually a little over 6 months, you have triggered tax residency, and they're going to tax you on all the money you make in the world, subject to treaties with your home country and stuff like that, that we don't need to get into. There are a few countries, including Panama and Costa Rica, that practice, as a matter of course, territorial taxation. What that means is you only get taxed on money you make inside the country, selling to citizens of that country, or with a company formed in that country, right? So people move to Costa Rica. They have a business that sells only to Americans and English-speaking people, so they pay no taxes there. Now, your home country is a different matter and is beyond the scope of this. But the important thing here is the no offshore taxes thing. Even countries with worldwide taxation are saying, hey, we're going to change the rules for you. You can stay here for a year, even though that's more than 6 months, and we're not going to tax any money you make outside of the country. Again, kind of important when you're choosing a place you want to hang out. And then finally, crypto friendly. There are some nations that are already proactively embracing cryptocurrency as a way to attract people there who obviously have holdings. I don't think the United States is going to come down too hard on regulating crypto. I think regulation is going to happen, and that it can be a good thing. But if, for example, the United States did get very heavy-handed about it, you're just going to see more people walk right out the door and find a more friendly jurisdiction. And again, countries are in the marketing business. They need to attract people like us to come there and spend our money in the local economy, because that is an incredible benefit for a lot of countries around the world that also happen to be incredibly beautiful. Okay, here's the other thing. So instead of the typical bootstrapping scenario that I laid out to you with my example, let's talk about community funding. And this is where the aspects of blockchain that you keep hearing about really come into play, right? Because these are effectively ways to make money that you can then use to do things even bigger than I did when I went on that, 3 startups in 3 years, all hit 7 figures, all more increasingly sophisticated. I've seen people last year do that in a month. I'm not exaggerating, and I'll give you some examples. So what are we talking about here? Tokens is a generic term for a cryptocurrency. That can mean Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are the 2 big mainstream tokens that have very different characteristics and functions. I can refer to creator coins. I have a creator coin for my business movement ventures. It's called Move. We call it a community coin, though, and I think you'll see why we prefer that term. Sometimes they're also called social tokens. Those 3 things mean the same thing. It's effectively a personally branded cryptocurrency that you use in various ways. So one way to use this is as a simple rewards program. Use the token instead of airline miles or credit card points or Starbucks points, what have you. Everyone's familiar with that concept. And we've implemented the use of our Move coin over it further. If you refer new subscribers to Further, then you earn Move coin for every subscriber that you attract. But there's more to it than that. You can actually use your currency. I talk about these type of businesses as your own personal enterprise, right? Everything that you participate in as a project, a new venture, what have you, it's all part of the way you generate multiple streams of income, right? So you can use these tokens, and we do this with Move, where we offer a lower price if you buy it in Move than if you buy it in US dollars. And you're like, Brian, that's insane. Why would you do that? Now, I did write an article about 4 or 5 months ago for Copyblogger that tried to explain this. This was at the very beginning of my journey. I may have to go back and take another look at that, but more or less it explains how it works. So if you transact business in your own currency and you own a whole bunch of that currency, the activity causes the price of the coin, the value on the open market, to go up. So what does that do to your, let's say, 50,000 coins that you've reserved for yourself? Well, you went from a coin that was worth $0 that's now worth $1. So you have $50,000 in coin. Now your coin is worth $5, right? You can do the math. It was one of the hardest things for me to wrap my head around, but we've been doing it for almost 6 months now, and it's amazing. We're able to give our customers greater value while we also get ancillary benefit through the use of creator coins, community coins, whatever you want to call it. Here's another scenario. Let's say that you have a subscription site. Maybe it's a paid newsletter, maybe it's a membership site, and you have your own coin token. So you tell your customers, all right, to get access to my paid newsletter or my membership site, you have to hold X amount. Let's say it's $100 a year. You have to hold $100 worth of Move coin in, depending on the platform, in your crypto wallet, in your Rally account, what have you, and you get access. And every time they try to access the membership site, the software checks to see if that's there. Now that technology exists now, and it actually works in various environments. But you'll see this year, we've already got a sneak preview at a WordPress plugin that works this way for membership sites. I hear that Circle is working on crypto access for their community software. Things are happening very quickly. So while there are technical limitations at this minute, by the time you get into this, you'll start seeing the software come out. This almost makes me wish I was still in the software business. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. There's so many needs right now for easy to use software. Just like WordPress in 2008 was hard for business people to understand. Imagine crypto wallets and all of that kind of thing. That's going to get very much better this year. Okay, so back to the scenario. As you sell more of your subscription with your coin goes up in value. So your 50,000 coin stash, your equity, if you will, continues to rise in value. But guess what happens to the subscriber? Their coins are going up in value. So let's say to renew their subscription after a year, they have to send you $100 of, let's say, Move coin, right? Because the price doubled or tripled or what have you, they pay you for another year. They still got their original coin. They haven't paid anything, right? Now, what does that do for the mindset of someone who's a fan of yours? Yes, they may be inclined to share your work because they like you, because they think you do good work. That happens all the time. There are benefits to people for sharing cool stuff, right? That's been the backbone of social media marketing for the last decade. But you get an added thing here. When you see that you're not only getting the subscription for free, but you're holding on to this branded cryptocurrency that is rising in value as you succeed more, they have even more incentive to spread the word about you. They have, in their own way, an ownership stake in what you're doing. Now, that's just one example. There are a lot more, but that one's pretty cool, I think, and pretty easy to understand. Okay, let's shift to NFTs. Oh my gosh, some of you are just like, I never want to hear about NFTs again. 2021 has been called the year of the NFT. You could not escape them. Now, if you think that an NFT is just a goofy JPEG of an ape or a mutant or a punk that people use for their Twitter profile, You're not wrong. They are that, but they're also so much more. Basically, an NFT is just a record of digital ownership. So let's fast forward years into the metaverse where you do have your place on the web as opposed to pages. And you've got, a studio, you've got artwork, you've got furniture, all of those things will be NFTs, and they will have real value the more we spend time in these virtual environments. But we're already seeing NFTs evolve from just JPEGs into items with real utility, because NFTs, just like in my last example, are membership access identifiers. They mean you belong in this environment. Your NFT unlocks this environment, and other people do not belong in this environment. Another way of saying community, right? Some people belong to certain communities and some people clearly don't, based on interests, demographics, geography, what have you. Not everyone belongs together in one community. That's the nature of it. And NFTs are a way to identify, hey, this is my group, in addition to the same scenario where the software recognizes that you're allowed to get in. So no more logins to your membership site, which means no more shared logins where someone buys access to your stuff and shares it with 50 other people, right? Can't do it anymore. That's one benefit. It's not something I've ever sweated too much, but it's nice knowing that you sell one membership, one person gets to come in and use it. So here's an example of this, real life. Me and Joe Polizzi, guy I mentioned earlier, are doing an event called Creator Economy Expo in May. Of course, we're selling tickets the normal way, but we're also selling NFTs. And these NFTs have a nice, unique JPEG that people are using as their Twitter profile. But what they really are never-ending tickets, meaning if you own one of these NFTs, you have access to every CEX, Creator Economy Expo, that we ever do. And not only that, which right there, that's worth thousands of dollars, but they're not just normal passes, they're VIP passes. So every one of them gets, VIP treatment at the event. Some of them have different levels of VIP access. I think the top level never-ending ticket, NET, allows you to introduce a celebrity keynote at each event, right? And when you think about, we may do 2 of these a year once we get going, that's a pretty amazing value. But it's really the VIP access and the status that comes with it. That's a big part of why people buy these things. So that is where you're going to see the most utility in NFTs as a content creator, as an access point to, your best work. But it's also a way to raise money quickly. Let me give you an example. My business partner, Jared Morris in Movement Ventures, is involved in an NFT project called Crypto Dads. So Crypto Dads is a bunch of depictions of various kinds of dads of all shapes, sizes, colors. And obviously that resonated with fathers who bought up however many the initial minting of the NFT was. It was quite a bit, right? And when you add it up, a lot of money was raised. Now, these are 2 guys who live in Denver who came up with an idea, commissioned some artwork, did what was necessary to create the NFTs and put them out in the marketplace. And now, in a very short time, they didn't have an existing audience. They really depended on the Web3 crypto world to spread the news for them. I haven't seen this level of viral cooperation since the early days of Web2. I mean, I thought it was dead. And that's another thing that's got me excited because people want you to succeed, even if it's not their particular project, because you're participating in this shift of the web like they were. Again, this was like how it was with blogging. Even when we got in fights with each other, there was a camaraderie that meant more than the competition we came to see later. So anyway, crypto dads, they raised millions of dollars, and now they're creating an energy drink called Big Dad Energy. I think that's pretty funny, but I'm not going to elaborate on it. They're creating a crypto dad video game, which takes a ton of capital to do. They're also licensing out the intellectual property of the crypto dads caricatures in various projects. So look what happened there. No VC, no angels, no bank loans. The community itself bought something that mattered to them so that they can be a part of something that matters to them. And now they are all essentially co-owners in a loose way of all this stuff, because with NFTs, you can always sell it. And when you sell it, the creator of the NFT gets a royalty. So again, think about that with your courses or your membership programs. Someone takes your course, they can trade in their NFT for the next level, maybe a mastermind, or they can sell it on the open market to the next person, get whatever the going rate is, and you get a percentage of that sale simply because you chose that model. Pretty cool stuff. Again, we could talk more and more about this. We don't have enough time, so I'm gonna keep going. And then finally, there's DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. It's a newish, been around, I think, for 5 years in reality, maybe 10 years academically. But they are organizations where people share ownership through tokens, and they share governance through smart contracts. A smart contract is an algorithm on the blockchain that dictates the rules of how people are going to transact and collaborate with one another. That's what I mean when I say you don't have to trust other people, because instead of having to trust a human being to follow the rules are programmatic, right? Pretty interesting. I'm not going to say too much about DAOs because in most cases, at least so far, I don't think they're the direction that we as content creators are going to go. I think you can do amazing things with tokens and NFTs, and it's easier to do that. DAOs have legal costs. You've got to run through securities laws. It's a major thing. I don't want to discourage you. I'm just saying you can probably get it done with a token or an NFT rather than doing a full-fledged DAO. Another interesting thing is in our unemployable community, where we've been talking about this stuff a lot for the last 6 months, our community was like, we don't need a DAO. We don't want to vote on stuff. We're here because we trust you to lead us. But yeah, we would like to participate financially, right? So I don't like to lead with the money aspect. I think it's got to be about the right movement, the right mission, the right people, all coming together to do something to succeed together, whether that's start a business, lose weight, learn a language, what have you. And then on top of that, the icing, I think, is the fact that they have a financial ownership participation in the overall project. So let's get into how you might think about starting up a project with these unique Web3 aspects in mind. Usually the first step, right? You choose a topic for your blog or your newsletter, you choose a niche, right? And that's not wrong, but I find it to be a very limiting way to think about it. And frankly, I've never started a business by choosing a niche or a topic in my life. Again, didn't really realize it until I've had time to reflect, after getting away from the software business. But like I told you, every time I did something, it was because I was joining a movement that I believed in, and I felt like it was satisfying my own sense of purpose and making me money, right? Like, have you ever heard the term money motivated? Usually you'll see it in the context of hiring salespeople. Like, some people will sell anything if the commission is right. I'm not like that. I got to have more than just money, because when the going gets tough, and you're not making any money yet, you need something more to keep you going. So I want you to think about this in terms of a mission. And I think you'll see that simple shift in mindset actually informs how you approach the entire rest of the business. So here's a little 3-part test that I like to use for selecting a mission. Yes, this is a business, so it has to be able to make money, okay? You have to choose a topic, an industry where people buy stuff, right? At minimum, well, yeah, even if you have a sponsorship model, people have to buy stuff in order for it to be viable. So you can't ignore profit, but it can't be the only thing. The second thing I look for is change. When I talk in terms of movements, they're usually groups of people who believe the status quo is wrong and they'd like to see it change. Excuse me. Right? So if you can identify those currents within the mainstream, WordPress was not mainstream. It was a fringe forked open source project, right? That became the most popular CMS on the internet. So you can't look at where things are now. You have to spot them early on. So I always look for change. Right now in the environment we're in, you're getting beat over the head with change. It's everywhere. Take a deep breath. Don't get overwhelmed and focus on what you know, what you're good at, and then add in the third component, which is purpose. Is what you're doing meaningful? Is your skill set able to help other people in a way that is personally rewarding for you in addition to financially rewarding? This is how I choose every business that I've started. And ever since the first one that failed, none of them have failed. And I think this is key. My catchphrase is keep going. And man, when you got to keep going, you got to have something more than money on your mind to do that. So quick 3-part test for you. Next up, who are your people? So again, I think, going back to whether it be a blog or a podcast or a newsletter, people choose a topic and that's it. They're like, my people are people who are interested in weight loss or starting a business or, what have you. And that's why so many projects fail, because unless you get really lucky, simply choosing a topic is not going to help you succeed, because all the same people who are interested in one topic are not the same kind of people, right? Let's use an extreme example of the political situation in the United States. You've got the right and the left. All of those, there are people on both sides who like fly fishing. There are people on both sides that like baking sourdough bread. But if you speak to those two sets of people the same way, or you speak to one, speak to one in the language of one group, you're going to really annoy the other group, which can be fine because you're never going to attract everyone. You don't even want to, but you want to be intentional about it. You want to proactively select the people. Now think about this again in terms of a mission. If you're going on a mission, are you just going to take whoever shows up, or do you want to hand pick your type of people to up your level of success, right? That's why I love the idea of choosing a mission instead of a topic or a niche. So some people who go a little bit beyond simply the topic will then think in terms of, demographics, right? We've been hearing about that marketing's about demographics our whole lives, like the 18 to 49 television demographic, the drive time radio demographic when people are driving home from work, right? It's not by any stretch of the imagination the most useful way to understand your people. You can incorporate demographic elements. For example, my newsletter Further is primarily aimed at Generation X. That's a demographic definition if there ever was one, but I don't speak to them as a demographic. There's a whole psychographic element of who my ideal Further subscriber is. And we're really good at attracting that kind of person and really good at running off people who don't fit that portrait. So let me give you an example of the danger of relying on demographics. Here is a demographic profile, demographic elements only. We've got a male. He was born in 1948. raised in the UK, married twice, wealthy and famous, and lives in a castle. That's, yeah, it sounds like a very specific person, right? But that actually describes both Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne exactly. Now, can you imagine treating those two guys as if they're one person because they're interested in remodeling their castle? No, right? Most people create content like it's for Prince Charles, boring, bland, guaranteed never to offend anyone, appeals to no one, right? You can't do it. You can't, unless your literal persona, the person you're trying to attract, is Prince Charles or someone like him, you do not want to create content that way. The opposite situation is true too. Like a lot of you may have a favorite writer out there. They're sassy, they're snarky, they're borderline offensive sometimes, but you love it, right? You love that voice. So you adopt it and mimic it in a project that you're doing. But it turns out that your audience isn't Ozzy Osbourne at all. It's somewhere in between, and they find your voice off-putting because you don't know who you're speaking to. Understanding your audience is so key after you decide what your mission is. So what do you focus on instead? Values, attitudes, lifestyles, right? Now, if you did a portrait of Ozzy Osbourne using these criteria, he would look nothing like Prince Charles. There would be no mistaking that this was a completely different person. I want you to focus in particular on values, or what I usually call core values. You understand the term confirmation bias, right? That means when we go out looking for evidence that supports our existing beliefs and worldviews. Well, that's not a good thing in a lot of ways. We all do it to some degree. We all do it when it comes to core values. Think about it. Like you're going to go out and seek someone to follow to help you accomplish something, and their core values are just completely opposite of yours. You're not going to pay attention to them. They'll offend you, right? So we all look for confirmation bias when it comes to values. And that's not a bad thing. So as a shortcut to creating the narrative of who your person, your audience is, who are your people, start with your core values and then work to attract people like that. Why? Because you can be authentic and you can connect with them almost effortlessly. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to always watch what you're going to say because you're going to offend someone. I mean, don't be careful. It's easy to offend people of any type, even if they are mostly your people, but you know what I mean. You connect with people. That's what engagement means. And it starts at that level. It's not your clever turn of phrase or the way you construct a sentence necessarily. It's whether or not they relate to you or not. Attitudes, really, it's like, how does this person view life? What's their worldview? That's a very important thing to understand about the audience that you're trying to reach, especially if you're trying to make it into a full-blown community. And then, of course, lifestyle is important in the type of stories you tell. Again, it often relates back to values, some demographic information. If you have more money than others, you probably have a different lifestyle, but there's a great range of variability within lifestyles, even outside of age, income, education, all of that kind of demographic stuff. And then finally, here's the element that you excel at. Whether you're just a frustrated novelist, you used to want to be a screenwriter. I thought I wanted to be at one time. Screenwriting was the best intro to copywriting I ever got, because you understand that everything is a story. When you're dealing with human beings, there's always a narrative going on. If you're not actively constructing a narrative, they're telling themselves their own story regardless, right? So the key to developing a true community of people that would join in together with a token or an NFT on a shared mission to do something, right? They have to have the story of the mission and who they are and why they belong firmly in their place. And that's where you as a content creator have the edge, right? Your normal business person is probably not going to understand this at the level you do. Some do, most don't. And some content creators don't want to think like an entrepreneur. You have to, but never forget that the creator part of you is the secret sauce. Okay, so with a community, communities still need leaders. They need organizers. They need people, someone to rally everyone around. You do that with your content, with your experience, with your subject matter expertise, and you bring people together. But don't forget that the story comes from them as well. You've got to listen as much as you lead, because you're co-writing the story when it comes to community. One of the best examples of this is Harley Davidson, which is essentially a cult brand, right? I mean, these people are hardcore, faithful, buying over and over these $20,000 motorcycles. And early on, the Harley Davidson executive leadership listened to some really dicey areas of society, including the Hells Angels, in forming the brand attitude, the community story, if you will, of Harley Davidson. It's all about rebellion. Even if you're an accountant or a lawyer, on the weekend, you put on those chaps and you hit the road, right? And they actually co-wrote the Harley Davidson community story by listening to how the community felt when they got on that Harley. This is applicable to any kind of community you can think of. Secondly, we're different together. So this touches on a lot of things: belonging, community, but also in marketing terminology, positioning, right? So how you position yourself is basically, when it comes down to it, how you're different from everyone else, even if it's about the same topic, the same kind of product, the same kind of service, right? You're coming at it from a different angle. I've always called this the winning difference, right? It's not just any difference, it's the one that helps you succeed in the marketplace. Sally Hogshead says, different is better than better, right? You can make the best new widget with all the best new features in the world, and no one cares if they don't perceive it as different from a competitive product, competitive community, competitive blog, newsletter, podcast, what have you. All right. Does that make sense? Now, the reason why we say we're different together instead of like you belong with us is the way the human brain is wired. 80% of our thoughts are framed in a negative way. It's an unfortunate aspect of our psyche from an evolutionary psychology standpoint. It was probably adaptive. We were always constantly looking out for trouble. Bad things happen, tiger in the bush, bear over there, right? We don't really have that anymore, but we haven't really evolved away from the human beings we were when we were hunter-gatherers, right? When we shifted to the first communities that we formed, well, with communal living, and then towns, cities, nations, etc. So when we think about where we belong, it's generally in terms of, I'm different from everyone else like this, right? It's alienation. We all have it. Some of us are more positive than others. Some of us dwell on it more, but we all feel a little alienated until we find someone who's different like us, and then we belong, right? So keep that in mind, not only with how you position your media vehicle, blog, podcast, newsletter, but also in how you speak to your audience about how you belong here because you're different like I'm different. Very important distinction, works wonders if you keep it in mind. And then finally, the persuasive power of unity. Like, those of us who are copywriters, we like to think we're pretty persuasive people, right? We know how to construct an argument. We know how to construct a sales letter, an opt-in landing page, and get you to take that action. Well, of course, not everyone does, right? We just want enough people to take that action. The reality of the situation is that we're individually probably not as persuasive as we'd like to think. But if we're speaking to people who view us as one of them, then they will accept us and they are more likely to do what we think is the right thing to do next, right? Robert Cialdini, kind of the social psychology godfather of influence, wrote the book called Influence, originally had 6 elements of influence, and we use them day in and day out as content creators and digital entrepreneurs. You've got social proof, authority, commitment and consistency, reciprocity, liking. That's 5. I'm leaving one out. It doesn't matter, because later Cialdini came up with the 7th principle of influence, and he said it blows all the rest of them away, and it's unity. And you see this again in the most extreme examples day in and day out. People will look at a medical authority who's on the other team, and they totally disregard anything he says. But their medical guy, now this guy, he's an expert. Now that's an extreme, but it's true across the board. It's just a spectrum, right? So when we truly feel unified with a group of people, and our leader, which would be you, is one of us, and that leader says, I think we should do this next. We should do this product next. We should build this next. Then that's the most persuasive you can be. So keep it in mind, by building a community of unified commonalities, you're actually creating a persuasion engine that is way more powerful than you are alone. All right. That is what I can do with the time I have allotted. I may have gone over, but I'm just trying to encourage you to think about these ideas, start getting involved, play around, get a crypto wallet, buy a little crypto. Who cares? It's really low right now. It's probably a good time, not financial advice. But yeah, I just want to pique your curiosity and your interest and see what's possible, and then go out there and start getting involved. That's about it. Tim?
Thank you so much, Brian. I've learned a lot from you with our conversations about Web3. I really encourage, just like you do, everybody to find a way to just get involved a little bit. It's the only way you can really learn about this stuff, whether that means just setting up a wallet. I know it's like uncomfortable because there's so much confusion and terminology, and it's a new frontier for us all, but it's going to happen. And 10 years from now, we'll all be comfortable with it the same way we're comfortable with like signing into WordPress, right? So you might as well get a head start on it. Great. Usually we have time for questions. Unfortunately, I got my kid downstairs and he's yelling at me.
Sorry about that. I guess I went a little over. Like I said, I had a lot to cover, and I was really trying to get it going. Maybe we can, I don't know. Tim, you got any ideas on taking questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Send any questions you have to my, just DM them to me on the network. I will go through all the questions, and what I'll do is I'll even write a blog post about this tomorrow, and it's going to be for Academy members only, but I will summarize all of the questions and give you some helpful links, maybe some tips on how to set up a wallet, just some tips about some NFT platforms. It'll summarize everything and give you some places to get started, because there's definitely a lot to unpack. But yeah, Brian, great job. I really loved your presentation. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim, and thank all of you for being here. And Tim, hit me up if there's a specific question that you want me to answer. I'll be happy to do it.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you so much, everyone. Look out for that email either tomorrow or the next day, depending how long it takes me to put all of these resources together. And finally, if you have any questions about your account, don't forget help@copyblogger.com. Our customer service rep, Davey, gets back to everybody within 24 hours. So if you have any questions, help copyblogger.com. Talk to you on the network, Brian. Have a great day. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you all next time.
Take care, everyone.